Every great connection starts with a single spark, a question, a story, or a shared moment that turns strangers into storytellers. Mastering conversations, how to make a conversation with anyone. Introduction. Have you ever wondered why some people can strike up a conversation with absolutely anyone? Why they seem to effortlessly connect with strangers while the rest of us struggle with awkward silences and uncomfortable small talk? Think about this for a moment. Every single person in your life, your closest friend, your partner, your mentor, was once a complete stranger to you. And what transformed them from stranger to significant? A conversation. That first exchange of words that created a link between you. Imagine every conversation as a tiny metal link. The first time you speak with someone, that initial link is formed. And with each subsequent conversation, that link strengthens. Day after day, we encounter countless strangers. The barista at your local coffee shop, the person sitting next to you on the train, the new colleague at work. With each interaction, we forge new links, gradually weaving an intricate web of connections that spans across our lives. This web of conversations defines us as human beings. Conversations can spark joy or ignite conflict. They can open doors to new opportunities or close them forever. Conversations can literally make war or create peace. They are the foundation of human connection. So why do so many of us fear talking to strangers? Why do we hesitate to say that first word, to create that first link? Perhaps it's because we've never been taught how to master the art of conversation. That's what this audiobook is about. I'm going to share with you the secrets to making meaningful conversations with anyone you meet. Drawing from years of experience as a professional communicator, I've distilled these insights into practical strategies that you can implement immediately. By the end of our journey together, you'll approach conversations not with anxiety, but with excitement. Because every stranger carries with them an opportunity to learn something new, to hear a story you've never heard before, to experience a perspective you've never considered. So let's begin this adventure into the art of conversation. Let's discover how to transform strangers into connections, one word at a time. Chapter 1. The Power of the First Word. Have you ever been in a room with someone you don't know, looked across at them and thought, I want to talk to this person? You can almost feel the first word forming in your mouth, but somehow it gets stuck. It hovers there, trapped between your desire to connect and your fear of rejection. That first word seems to dance on the tip of your tongue, going up and down, but never quite making it out. It's like standing at the edge of a diving board, wanting to jump, but frozen by the thought of what might happen when you hit the water. Here's my advice. Just say it. What's the worst that could happen? They don't want to talk to you? Well, they're not talking to you now. The situation can only improve from here. Maybe they'll ignore you, which leaves you exactly where you started. Maybe they'll respond with brief politeness and then turn away, a minor rejection that will be forgotten by tomorrow. Or maybe, just maybe, they'll light up at your greeting, relieved that someone else took the initiative that they themselves were too nervous to take. I believe wholeheartedly in what I call the first word floodgates. Once you've said that first word, once you've broken through that initial barrier, everything else flows naturally. The conversation takes on a life of its own, carrying both participants along its current. It's remarkable how that single word, that tiny verbal bridge, can suddenly make communication effortless. The pressure valve releases, and words that were previously stuck now tumble out with ease. So keep it simple. A hi, a hey, a hello. That's all it takes to open the floodgates. And when you say it, do what every good bowler does before releasing the ball. Gather your enthusiasm, your positivity, your energy. Put on a genuine smile and launch that first word with confidence. Infuse that simple greeting with warmth. Let your eyes match the welcome in your voice. Make that single word count by delivering it like you mean it. I've spent years as a radio presenter, and do you know what the hardest part of my job is? Time. In a 4-hour show, I get just 20 minutes of talk time. That's all. And in those precious 20 minutes, I have to convince 1.6 million listeners, people I cannot see, people whose reactions I cannot gauge, that I am their best friend. I have to establish a connection, inform them, excite them, engage with them, and most importantly, leave a smile on their faces. And it all starts with that first word when I switch on the microphone. Think about the most charismatic people you know. What sets them apart isn't necessarily what they say, but how they say it. They speak with warmth and authenticity. They make you feel like you're the only person in the room, and it all begins with that first word. They don't start conversations with hesitation or apology. They begin with presence and intention. Their hello carries the promise of something worth hearing, something worth sharing. I remember a flight I took from New York to San Francisco. I was seated next to an elderly gentleman who had his nose buried in a book. For the first hour, we sat in silence. I kept thinking about starting a conversation but hesitated. What if he wanted to be left alone? What if I was interrupting his reading? What if he found me annoying? These questions circled in my mind, creating a barrier between us as tangible as the armrest we shared. Finally, as the flight attendant served our drinks, I turned to him and simply said, "Hello." That one word led to a 4-hour conversation about his life as a Holocaust survivor, his career as a physicist, and his perspective on happiness after experiencing unimaginable tragedy. That one word, hello, gave me access to wisdom I carry with me to this day. Had I remained silent, trapped by my own hesitation, I would have missed one of the most profound conversations of my life. This isn't an isolated incident. I've seen the power of the first word transform awkward elevator rides into meaningful exchanges, turn solitary coffee shop visits into new friendships, and convert sterile networking events into genuine connection opportunities. The first word is like a key that unlocks possibilities previously hidden behind the door of silence. The beauty of the first word is that it requires no special skill or talent. Anyone can say hello. The challenge isn't in the complexity of the task, but in overcoming our own hesitation. It's in pushing past that moment of doubt, that flash of social anxiety that tells us to stay quiet, to remain in our comfortable bubble of isolation. Strangers are everywhere, and we've always been told, don't talk to strangers. But I beg to differ. Every stranger comes with an opportunity to learn something new, to hear a story you've never heard before, to gain a perspective you've never considered. Each person carries with them a universe of experiences, insights, and stories that remain inaccessible to you until you say that first word. I've made it a personal practice to initiate at least one conversation with a stranger every day. Some of these exchanges last only a minute or two, a brief but pleasant connection that brightens both our days. Others evolve into longer discussions that leave me enriched with new knowledge or perspectives. And a precious few, have blossomed into lasting friendships or professional relationships that have significantly shaped my life's path. So I challenge you, the next time you're in a situation where you could potentially start a conversation with someone new, say that first word. Don't overthink it, don't rehearse it, just say it. Open the floodgates and see where the conversation takes you. It might be nowhere special, a pleasant but forgettable exchange, or it might be the beginning of something remarkable. Try this simple exercise. The next time you're in a public place, a coffee shop, a park bench, a waiting room, challenge yourself to say hello to someone. Notice how it feels before you say it. Notice the anticipation, perhaps the nervousness. Then say it anyway. Observe what happens, not just to the other person, but to you. Feel the release, the opening, the possibility that emerges from those simple syllables. Remember, every meaningful relationship in your life began with a first word. Every deep connection started with that initial spark. Your closest friend, your partner, your mentor, all of these relationships existed first in the realm of the unknown, the unfamiliar. They all began with someone having the courage to break the silence. By mastering the courage to say that first word, you're not just initiating a conversation, you're opening the door to potentially life-changing connections. You're declaring yourself open to the richness that other people can bring to your life. You're stepping out of isolation and into the interconnected web of human experience. And here's a secret that most people don't realize. Most strangers are just as eager for connection as you are. They're waiting for someone to break the ice, to extend the hand of conversation. When you become that person, the one brave enough to say the first word, you're not just doing yourself a favor, you're doing them one too. So gather your courage, summon your smile, and say that first word. It's the smallest of actions with the greatest of potentials. It costs nothing but a moment of bravery, and its rewards can be immeasurable. Chapter 2. Skip the small talk. We've all been trapped in conversations that go nowhere. Hi. Hey. How are you? I'm fine. What's going on? Nothing much. Same old. So tell me what's new. 45 seconds down, and what have you learned about the other person? Nothing. What connection have you established? None. This is the trap of small talk. It fills the air with words, but leaves the space between people just as empty as before. It's like a conversational treadmill. Lots of movement, but you never actually go anywhere. Time is our most precious resource. In a 4-hour radio show, I get just 20 minutes to talk. That's all. And in those precious minutes, I can't waste a single second on meaningless exchanges that don't create a connection. I have to make every word count, every question matter. Here's my radical advice. Skip the small talk and ask a really personal question. I know what you're thinking. Isn't that inappropriate? Won't people be offended? Trust me when I say this. You will be amazed at how willing people are to share meaningful parts of themselves if you just ask. People are hungry for authentic connection in a world of superficial interactions. They're tired of the same old script, the same empty exchanges that fill space but don't fill hearts. Think about it. When was the last time you walked away from a conversation full of weather observations and generic pleasantries feeling truly energized or connected? Probably never. But I bet you can remember conversations where you shared something real, where you felt seen and heard, where you connected with someone on a deeper level. Those are the exchanges that stay with us. So what kind of personal questions work best? Look for questions that invite stories rather than one-word answers. Questions that tap into identity, experiences, or perspectives. Questions that signal genuine curiosity about who this person is beneath the social mask we all wear. For instance, that's an interesting name. Is there a story behind it? How long have you lived in the city? Do you remember your first impression when you arrived? What's something you're passionate about that most people don't know? What's been the highlight of your week so far? I noticed your accent. Where did you grow up? That's a beautiful piece of jewelry. Does it have a special meaning? These questions bypass the surface level and dive straight into what makes someone unique. They signal that you're interested in more than just filling silence. You're interested in them as a person. They open doors to stories, to memories, to the things that actually matter to people. Now, there's an art to asking personal questions without seeming intrusive. The key is to start with something you've observed, something the person is wearing, something they've mentioned, something about the shared environment, and then use that as a bridge to something more personal. This approach feels natural rather than jarring. I practice this approach constantly in my daily life. One evening, I got into a taxi and instead of the usual, "How's your day going?" I asked the driver, "Where are you from? And where does your family live?" What followed was a 20-minute conversation with a 60-year-old Pakistani driver about his life in Peshawar. We discussed politics, music, family, his wife, his farm. He told me about the mango trees he had planted when his first son was born, how they had grown tall and strong just like his boy. He shared his dreams of returning home one day, of sitting in the shade of those trees with his grandchildren around him. By the end of the ride, he was so convinced we had a connection that he was trying to show me a photograph of his 26-year-old college-educated son, suggesting I might be the perfect bride for him. As I was getting out of the taxi, he was enthusiastically pulling out a passport-sized photo with such hope in his eyes that saying goodbye became quite challenging. While I'm not suggesting every conversation should end with a marriage proposal, In fact, consider that a warning. This story illustrates how quickly you can establish a meaningful connection when you bypass small talk. In just 20 minutes, I learned more about this man's life, values, and dreams than I know about neighbours I've lived next to for years. The key is to ask these personal questions with genuine curiosity. People can sense when your interest is authentic versus when you're just going through conversational motions. Lean in slightly when they answer. Nod. Make eye contact. Show them that their answer matters to you. React to what they're saying with appropriate emotion. Smile at the happy parts. Express sympathy for the challenges. These small gestures of attention validate their willingness to share. And don't just listen to respond, listen to understand. There's a profound difference. When you listen to respond, you're already formulating your next statement while the other person is still talking. When you listen to understand, you're fully present with their words, absorbing their meaning, connecting with their experience. This quality of attention is rare and valuable in our distracted world. Here's another benefit to skipping small talk. It saves time. In our busy lives, we often don't have hours to gradually work our way from weather observations to meaningful exchange. By asking a personal question early, you accelerate the connection process. You bypass the shallow waters and dive straight into the depths where real connection happens. I found this approach particularly valuable in professional settings. At networking events, instead of the standard "what do you do?" followed by a business card exchange, I might ask, "What's the most interesting project you're working on right now?" Or, "What part of your work are you most passionate about?" The conversations that follow are invariably more engaging, more memorable, and more likely to lead to meaningful professional relationships. Of course, there's a balance to strike. You don't want to ask questions that are too personal too quickly. Start with questions that are personal but not intimate. Questions about someone's interests, their hometown, their opinions on general topics. As the conversation progresses and trust builds, you can gradually move toward more meaningful exchanges. And be willing to share as well. Conversation is a dance of give and take. If you ask personal questions but reveal nothing of yourself, the exchange will feel interrogative rather than conversational. When appropriate, offer your own stories, your own perspectives. Vulnerability invites vulnerability. I remember sitting next to a woman on a train who seemed completely closed off. Headphones in, book up, body language screaming, "Don't talk to me." But we were on a 3-hour journey and something told me there might be an interesting person behind that wall. Instead of starting with, "Where are you headed?" I noticed the book she was reading, a novel I had recently finished, and asked, "What do you think of the ending? I found it so unexpected." Her face lit up. She removed her headphones and launched into a passionate analysis of the book's themes and characters. From there, we moved to other books, to writing, to her work as an editor, to her dreams of becoming an author herself. By the end of the journey, she had shared her deepest creative aspirations and even emailed me the first chapter of a manuscript she was working on. All because I skipped the small talk and connected with her through something that mattered to her. So the next time you meet someone new, challenge yourself to skip the "how are you" and "nice weather we're having" routine. Instead, ask something that invites them to share a piece of their story. You'll be surprised at how quickly strangers become connections when you give them the opportunity to be seen. And remember, in a world where meaningful connection is increasingly rare, your genuine interest in another person is a gift. By asking questions that matter, by truly listening to the answers, you're not just making conversation. You're creating moments of authentic human connection in a world that desperately needs more of them. Chapter 3. Find the Me Toos. Have you ever met someone who starts a conversation like they're starting a debate? "I'm from Chicago." "I hate Chicago." Or perhaps, "I love this restaurant." "Really? The food is so overpriced." "I just watched the new Marvel movie." Those superhero films are all the same. Nothing kills a conversation faster than negativity or contradiction. When you immediately position yourself in opposition to someone else's experience or preference, you create distance rather than connection. You've essentially told the other person, what you value isn't valuable, what you enjoy isn't enjoyable. your perspective is wrong. And just like that, the bridge between you crumbles before it's even fully built. I've witnessed this countless times. Conversations that could have blossomed into meaningful exchanges withering in seconds because someone chose to contradict rather than connect. It's a natural human tendency, this desire to assert our own opinions and preferences. But it's a tendency that serves us poorly when we're trying to build relationships. Instead, when you meet someone for the first time, make a conscious effort to find the one thing, just one thing, that you and that person might have in common. When you identify that shared point and use it as your conversational foundation, something magical happens. The interaction becomes easier, more fluid, because suddenly you're on the same side of something. You've created an alliance, however small. I call these moments of connection me toos. They're the points in conversation where both people can nod and say, me too. These shared experiences or perspectives create a powerful sense of recognition and belonging. They transform the conversation from two separate monologues into a shared dialogue, a collaborative creation. Think about how you feel when someone responds to your statement with me too. There's an immediate sense of validation, isn't there? A feeling that you're not alone in your experience or perspective. That simple phrase creates an instant bond, a tiny thread connecting your life to theirs. Now you might be wondering, what could I possibly have in common with a complete stranger? The answer is more than you think. You're both in the same place at the same time. That's already something. Perhaps you're both attending the same event, live in the same neighborhood, or are experiencing the same weather. Maybe you both have children, enjoy similar foods, or have traveled to the same places. The possibilities for connection are endless because, despite our differences, human experiences share common threads. We all know joy and sorrow. We all face challenges and celebrate triumphs. We all have dreams and fears. These universal experiences provide fertile ground for finding me too moments. The key is to listen actively for potential connections rather than waiting for your turn to speak. When someone mentions they just returned from Italy and you've been there too, that's your opportunity to say, me too. Which parts did you visit? If they mention they're struggling with a work challenge that you've faced before, there's your me too moment. If they express an opinion you share, acknowledge that common ground before adding your own perspective. This approach requires a shift in how we listen. Most of us listen with the intent to respond. We're formulating our next statement while the other person is still speaking. But to find me too moments, we need to listen with the intent to connect. We need to be fully present, attentive to the details that might reveal shared experiences or perspectives. I once sat next to a woman on a plane who seemed completely different from me. She was at least 30 years older, from a different cultural background, and worked in a field I knew nothing about. As we reluctantly began chatting, the flight was delayed, she mentioned her frustration with technology. I could have responded with advice or a generic acknowledgement. Instead, I shared a recent embarrassing story about my own technological ineptitude, how I had spent an hour trying to figure out why my printer wouldn't work, only to discover it wasn't plugged in. She burst out laughing and shared her own technological mishap, a video call with her grandchildren where she couldn't figure out how to turn off a filter that transformed her face into a potato for the entire conversation. That small Me Too moment, our shared experience of feeling overwhelmed by technology, opened the door to a fascinating 2-hour conversation about her life as one of the first female executives in her industry, the challenges she had overcome, and the wisdom she had gained along the way. Had I responded differently, had I missed that opportunity for connection, I would have lost access to her remarkable story and insights. That's the power of finding Me Too. Stories, they unlock doors to deeper, more meaningful exchanges. I've made finding Me Toos a conscious practice in my conversations, especially with people who seem different from me on the surface. It's remarkable how often these moments of connection emerge when you're looking for them. The conservative businessman and the liberal artist discover they both collect vintage vinyl records. The elderly retiree and the young student find they share a passion for the same obscure author. The fitness enthusiast and the bookworm realize they both struggle with the same self-doubts. These discoveries don't happen by accident. They happen because someone was intentionally seeking common ground, actively listening for those points of intersection where different lives touch. Finding me toos doesn't mean you have to agree with everything the other person says. It doesn't mean suppressing your own perspectives or pretending to share interests you don't actually have. Authenticity remains essential. It simply means looking for points of connection before exploring differences. It means approaching conversations with a mindset of what do we share rather than how am I different? This approach is particularly valuable in our increasingly polarized world, where differences in politics, religion, and values can create seemingly unbridgeable divides. By starting with what we share, our common humanity, our shared experiences, our mutual concerns, we create a foundation for understanding that can withstand the exploration of our differences. I've seen this principle work in the most unlikely settings. At a community forum where tensions were running high over a controversial local issue, I watched a skilled facilitator transform the dynamic by asking participants to share stories about why they loved their neighborhood. As people spoke about their children playing in the local park, their favorite corner cafe, their concern for elderly neighbors, the atmosphere in the room visibly shifted. They hadn't changed their positions on the issue at hand, but they had recognized their shared investment in the community's well-being. From that foundation of common ground, they were able to discuss their differences more respectfully and productively. When you find a me too, you create a foundation of trust. From that foundation, the conversation can go anywhere, even into areas where you disagree, because you've established that fundamental sense of connection. You've demonstrated that you see the other person, not as an opponent, but as a fellow human with valid experiences and perspectives. This principle extends beyond individual conversations to all forms of human connection. Successful relationships, whether friendships, romantic partnerships, or professional collaborations, are built on a foundation of shared values, interests, or goals. These me toos create the initial bond that allows the relationship to weather differences and challenges. So, in your next conversation with someone new, listen carefully for potential me too moments. When you hear one, acknowledge it enthusiastically. Me too. I also. Follow up with a question that invites them to elaborate on that shared interest or experience. Watch how the energy of the conversation shifts, how the connection deepens. And if you find yourself in a conversation that's becoming adversarial, pause and redirect. Look for that point of common ground, that shared perspective that can transform the dynamic from debate to dialogue. It might be as simple as saying, I think we both want what's best for our community, or we both care deeply about this issue, even if we see different solutions. This simple practice, finding the me toos, will transform your conversations from awkward exchanges into meaningful connections. It will open doors to understanding across differences. It will create bridges where walls might otherwise stand. In a world that often emphasizes what divides us, choosing to focus first on what unites us is both a conversational strategy and a radical act of human connection. Chapter 4. Pay a unique compliment. I read somewhere that people will forget what you do and they'll forget what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. This insight captures something profound about human connection. At the heart of meaningful conversation lies not just the exchange of information, but the exchange of feeling, the emotional imprint we leave on each other. So be generous. Go out and give someone a nice full compliment. Compliments are conversational gifts. They cost nothing to give, yet can be incredibly valuable to receive. A thoughtful compliment can transform someone's day, boost their confidence, and create an immediate sense of warmth between you. But not all compliments are created equal. I have this belief about what I call a compliment immunity meter, and it comes from an experience I had when I met a gorgeous supermodel at an event. I looked at her and said, "Wow, you are beautiful." There was no reaction on her face, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. And I thought to myself, how is that possible? That's when I realized she is immune to the word beautiful. She's probably heard it 100,000 times that day alone. And if she's on social media, she's heard it 1,000,000 times. The compliment had lost all meaning for her through sheer repetition. This experience taught me something important about the art of complimenting. There are certain words that each of us have developed an immunity to through overexposure. It could be nice, it could be awesome, it could be cool, it could be smart, or talented, or hardworking. These generic compliments are like fast food, quickly consumed and just as quickly forgotten. They might provide a moment's satisfaction, but they don't nourish the deeper hunger for genuine recognition and appreciation that we all share. So how do we break through this immunity? By crafting compliments that are specific, genuine, and unique to the person we're speaking with. Compliments that show we've been paying attention, that we see something in them that perhaps others have missed or failed to acknowledge. Try to construct a compliment that's unique and genuine, and you don't have to lie. Really, when you look at someone and say, "I love how when you smile, it's like your nose smiles, and then your eyes smile, and your ears smile, even your forehead smiles, and suddenly, the whole person is just smiling." That's a compliment they're not going to forget for a while. The power of a unique compliment lies in its specificity. Instead of telling someone they're a good speaker, you might say, "I was struck by how you used silence in your presentation. Those thoughtful pauses gave weight to your words and allowed important points to sink in." Instead of saying someone is kind, you might say, "I've noticed how you always remember people's names and something about their lives. It makes everyone feel valued in a way that's rare." These specific observations demonstrate that you've been paying attention at a deeper level. You're not just seeing the surface, you're seeing the unique qualities that make this person who they are. And being truly seen in this way is one of the most profound human needs. I remember meeting an elderly man at a community event who seemed withdrawn and quiet. Rather than offering a generic pleasantry, I noticed his hands. They were strong and weathered, with calluses that spoke of decades of work. I commented on them, asking if he had been a craftsman. His entire demeanor transformed as he began telling me about his 50 years as a carpenter, the buildings he had helped create across the city, the apprentices he had trained. That simple, specific observation opened the door to a wealth of stories and a connection that would never have formed through conventional small talk. The key to a powerful compliment is threefold. It must be specific, it must be sincere, and it must be something the person values about themselves. This last point is crucial. A compliment that doesn't align with how someone sees themselves or what they value will ring hollow, no matter how well-intentioned. If someone prides themselves on their intellect, complimenting their appearance might feel superficial to them. If someone values their creativity, acknowledging their organizational skills might seem to miss the point of what makes them unique. This is why listening and observation are essential precursors to meaningful compliments. By paying attention to what someone talks about with enthusiasm, what they take pride in, what lights them up, you gain insight into what they value about themselves. Your compliments can then reflect and reinforce those values, creating a powerful sense of being understood. And here's another insight about compliments. They reveal as much about the giver as the receiver. When you compliment someone on a quality you genuinely admire, you're sharing something about your own values and perceptions. This creates a moment of authentic connection, a bridge between your inner worlds. I found that one of the most powerful forms of compliment acknowledges growth or effort rather than fixed traits. Instead of saying, "You're so talented," try, "I've noticed how much your skills have developed since you started this project. Your dedication really shows." This kind of compliment recognizes the person's agency and effort, qualities they can control, rather than innate characteristics they were born with. Compliments can also be powerful conversation starters. A thoughtful, specific compliment followed by a question can open the door to fascinating exchanges. "That's a beautiful scarf with such unusual patterns. Does it have a story behind it?" "I was impressed by the point you made in the meeting about customer feedback. What led you to that insight?" But perhaps the most important thing to remember about compliments is that they should be given freely, without expectation of return. A compliment offered as a manipulation or with strings attached isn't a gift, it's a transaction. True compliments come from a place of genuine appreciation and the desire to acknowledge something positive you've observed. I challenge you to become more intentional about the compliments you give. Before your next social gathering or meeting, take a moment to reflect on the people you'll be seeing. What do you genuinely appreciate about them? What have you noticed that others might miss? What effort or growth have you observed that deserves acknowledgement? Armed with these reflections, you'll be prepared to offer compliments that break through the immunity meter, that make people feel truly seen and valued. You'll transform routine interactions into moments of genuine connection. And don't forget to compliment yourself as well. Take time to acknowledge your own growth, effort, and unique qualities. The ability to recognize and appreciate the positive in yourself enhances your capacity to do the same for others. So pay a unique and genuine compliment. It costs you nothing, takes only a moment of thoughtfulness, and has the power to transform both a conversation and a relationship. In a world where criticism and judgment often dominate, the gift of sincere appreciation stands out all the more brightly. Chapter 5. Ask for an opinion. All of us have opinions, trust me, and we all want them to be heard, and everybody wants validation. So go on and ask for an opinion, and that's when you open up a two-way street. That is when the real communication begins, and you will be surprised how much you can pick up about a person just by asking their opinion on something pretty generic. Asking for someone's opinion is powerful because it accomplishes several things simultaneously. First, it signals respect. You're acknowledging that their thoughts have value. Second, it creates engagement. People naturally become more invested in conversations where their viewpoint matters. And third, it reveals character. Opinions offer glimpses into someone's values, priorities, and way of thinking. Here's a mistake that some people make. They ask your opinion about something really difficult. It feels almost intimidating. Somewhere in a room full of very well-informed people, and someone was to come up to me and say, "So what do you think about the way the oil prices have affected the real estate market in Dubai?" I feel a bit cornered. I feel like I might fail, and this is an examination, and that's the lesson. Nobody needs to fail at a first-time conversation. Just ask something simple. Keep it generic. How do you like your coffee? When did you watch your last movie? What did you think of it? These questions are accessible to anyone, regardless of their expertise or background. They invite participation without pressure. When somebody gives you their opinion, really listen. Don't listen to reply, listen to listen. There's a difference. When you listen to reply, you're already formulating your next statement while the other person is still speaking. When you listen to listen, you're fully present with their words, absorbing not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. Opinions are windows into people's inner worlds. Pay attention not just to the content of their opinion, but to what it reveals about their values, their experiences, their way of seeing the world. Someone's preference for action movies over dramas might seem trivial, but their explanation might reveal their need for escape, their appreciation of clear moral boundaries, or their love of spectacle and excitement. Remember that asking for opinions isn't about agreement. You don't need to share someone's perspective to value hearing it. In fact, some of the most enriching conversations come from respectfully exploring different viewpoints. The goal isn't consensus, but connection, creating a space where diverse thoughts can be expressed and considered. Chapter 6. Be present. I know you've been through this. I know I have. You're pouring your heart out to someone, and they are like this. Yeah, go on, keep talking. I can multitask. What's with Wi-Fi? You know, when someone's trying to communicate with you, the least you can do is really be in that conversation. Just be wholeheartedly present. Just be there. Presence is perhaps the greatest gift you can offer another person. In an age of constant distraction, where notifications ping, screens glow, and attention fragments, choosing to be fully present with someone is a radical act of connection. What does it mean to be present? It means bringing your complete attention to the interaction. It means putting away your phone, turning away from your computer, and focusing on the person in front of you. It means listening, not just with your ears, but with your eyes, your body language, your entire being. And, my favorite part, make eye contact. Trust me, eye contact is where all the magic happens. You can feel the conversation. And trust me, When you are looking at someone in the eye, 9 out of 10 times, they will not dare look away. Right? Eye contact creates a circuit of connection. It says, I see you. I'm with you. What you're saying matters to me. It allows you to pick up on subtle emotional cues that might be missed otherwise. The slight crinkle around the eyes that signals genuine joy, the momentary flash of vulnerability when touching on a difficult topic. Being present isn't just about external behaviors though. It's also about internal focus. It means temporarily setting aside your own concerns, judgments, and distractions to create space for the other person's reality. It means resisting the urge to mentally rehearse your next point while they're still speaking. Now, if only I could look into the eyes of 1.6 million people, I would not have to worry about you guys tuning out during the ad breaks. As a radio presenter, I can't see my listeners, can't make eye contact, can't read their body language. But I've learned to create a sense of presence even across the airwaves by speaking as if I'm talking to just one person, by bringing my full energy and attention to each moment on air. The quality of our presence affects the quality of our conversations. When we're distracted, conversations remain shallow. When we're fully present, even brief exchanges can become meaningful. A 5-minute conversation with someone who is truly present can feel more satisfying than an hour with someone who is physically there but mentally elsewhere. So the next time you're in conversation, challenge yourself to be fully present. Put away distractions. Make eye contact. Listen deeply. Your presence is a gift, one that costs you nothing but your attention, yet means everything to the person receiving it. Chapter 7. Remember the details. That brings me to this, my favorite point, because I think it's got a catchy name. Name, place, animal, thing. You remember that game? Remember the little details about a person? Remember their name. It's so important. It's awful when you meet someone for the 18th time and you say, you must be Paul, no Peter. Something with the P and it ends with. It's terrible. Remember someone's name and say it back to them. You have no idea how important you're making them feel, and that's not the only detail. Dale Carnegie famously said that a person's name is to them the sweetest and most important sound in any language. When you remember and use someone's name, you're acknowledging their individuality, their importance. You're saying, you matter enough for me to commit this detail to memory. But remembering names is just the beginning. Remember all the other details as well. The places they like to go to, the places they've been to, the places they want to go to, their pets' names. How their pets been feeling lately. The things they like. Remember their children's names, that's such a winner. Remember their wife's names, their girlfriend's names. Just don't mix up the last two, because that could be disastrous. These details might seem small, but they're the building blocks of meaningful connection. When you remember that someone's daughter just started college, or that they were worried about a work presentation last time you spoke, or that they're passionate about mountain biking, you're demonstrating that you see them as a full person with a life that extends beyond your interactions. Remembering details also provides natural conversation starters for future encounters. How was your trip to Barcelona? Did your son's team win the championship? Did you finish that book you were so excited about? These questions bridge past conversations with present ones, creating continuity in your relationship. If you struggle with remembering details, don't be afraid to take notes after significant conversations, especially in professional contexts. Far from being impersonal, this practice shows your commitment to truly knowing the people in your life. Remember these little things about people and repeat it back to them. Ask, be genuinely interested, and automatically you kind of become an investor in their well-being, so they'll feel responsible to you to keep that conversation going. Chapter 8. Embrace silence. In our rush to fill every moment with words, we often overlook one of the most powerful elements of great conversation: strategic silence. Those moments of quiet aren't failures of communication, they're opportunities for depth, reflection, and genuine connection. They're the spaces between notes that transform random sounds into music. Many of us fear silence in conversation. We rush to fill pauses, rambling nervously rather than allowing a natural rhythm of speech and silence. This fear is deeply ingrained in our social conditioning. From an early age, we're taught that good communicators are always articulate, always ready with the next thought, always filling the air with words. Silence feels like failure, a sign that we've run out of things to say, that we're boring, that we're losing the other person's interest. But master conversationalists understand that silence serves many valuable purposes. They wield silence as skillfully as they wield words, knowing when to speak and when to create space for something deeper to emerge. Silence gives space for reflection. After asking a thoughtful question, resist the urge to immediately follow up or rephrase. Allow the other person time to consider their response, to reach beyond their first automatic answer to something more meaningful. Some of the most insightful comments come after a moment of quiet contemplation. When you rush to fill silence, you often cut off the most thoughtful part of someone's response, the part that comes after they've moved past their initial surface-level reaction. I remember interviewing a renowned scientist about his groundbreaking work. I asked him about the moment of his greatest discovery. He began with a standard answer about a particular experiment, but then fell silent. Rather than jumping in with another question, I waited. After about 10 seconds, which felt like an eternity in radio terms, he continued with a much more personal reflection about how his greatest discovery wasn't in the lab at all, but in realizing how his work connected to questions he'd had since childhood. That moment of vulnerability and insight would never have emerged had I rushed to fill the silence. Silence also communicates respect. It says, "I'm not in a hurry. Your thoughts deserve time and consideration." This is particularly important when discussing complex or emotional topics. By not rushing someone, you create space for authentic expression. You signal that you're interested in their complete thought, not just the convenient soundbite. In cultures around the world, the meaning and use of silence varies dramatically. In some Western contexts, silence can feel uncomfortable, something to be filled. But in many Japanese conversations, for example, ma, the silence between words, is considered as important as the words themselves. It's seen as a space where connection happens on a deeper level than language can facilitate. By embracing strategic silence, we can incorporate this wisdom into our own conversational practice. Silence can also be a powerful tool for emphasis. A well-timed pause before making an important point creates anticipation. A moment of silence after a significant statement gives it space to resonate. Think of great public speakers and how they use pauses to underscore their most important messages. This same technique works powerfully in one-on-one conversations. In my years as a radio presenter, I've learned that strategic pauses can be as impactful as words. A moment of silence after sharing an important point gives listeners time to absorb it. A pause before responding to a guest's comment shows thoughtfulness and respect for their perspective. Even in a medium where dead air is typically considered a cardinal sin, I've found that thoughtful silence can create some of the most compelling moments of connection with my audience. Silence also creates space for non-verbal communication to flourish. So much of human connection happens beyond words, through facial expressions, body language, energy, and emotion. When we fill every moment with speech, we miss the opportunity to connect on these other channels. A shared moment of silence while maintaining eye contact can sometimes communicate more than dozens of words. Of course, not all silence is comfortable, especially at first. But rather than viewing these moments as awkward gaps to be filled, try reframing them as natural breathing spaces in the conversation. Just as music needs rests between notes, dialogue needs moments of quiet to find its rhythm. Just as a painting needs negative space to highlight its subject, conversation needs silence to give meaning to words. Learning to be comfortable with silence is a practice. Start small. Try waiting 3 seconds longer than you normally would before responding to someone. Notice your discomfort, acknowledge it, but don't immediately act on it by speaking. Gradually extend these moments of silence as you become more comfortable with them. Pay attention to the quality of silence in your conversations. There's a world of difference between awkward silence that stems from disengagement and rich silence that's full of attentiveness and connection. The latter has a different quality. It feels alive and pregnant with possibility rather than empty and uncomfortable. The next time you find yourself in conversation, experiment with being comfortable in silence. Resist the urge to fill every pause. Notice how the quality of the exchange shifts when you allow space for thoughts to develop fully before moving on to the next point. Observe how deeper insights and more authentic sharing often emerge from these quiet moments. In a world increasingly filled with noise and constant stimulation, the ability to create and hold space for meaningful silence is becoming a rare and valuable skill. By mastering this aspect of conversation, you offer others a precious gift, the space to be fully heard, not just in their words, but in the thoughtful silence that surrounds them. Chapter 9. Ask follow-up questions. If there's one technique that separates ordinary conversationalists from extraordinary ones, it's the art of the follow-up question. While basic questions initiate dialogue, follow-up questions transform exchanges into genuine conversations with depth and momentum. They're the difference between skimming the surface of a topic and diving deep into its most interesting aspects. Think about the most engaging conversations you've had. Chances are they weren't just a series of unrelated questions and answers, but rather an exploration that unfolded naturally, with each response leading to a new avenue of discovery. This organic development is powered by skillful follow-up questions. Follow-up questions signal that you're not just going through the motions of conversation, you're actively engaged with what the other person is saying. They show that you're listening attentively and care enough to explore further. In a world where so many people are waiting for their turn to speak rather than truly listening, this level of engagement is both rare and deeply appreciated. The most effective follow-up questions emerge naturally from what the person has just shared. If someone mentions they recently traveled to Japan, rather than immediately shifting to your own travel experiences, you might ask, "What was your favorite unexpected discovery there?" Or, "How did the reality of Japan compare to what you'd imagined?" These questions invite the person to go beyond the basic facts of their trip and share the experiences that were most meaningful to them. I once met a man at a conference who mentioned he'd changed careers in his 40s. Instead of simply acknowledging this fact and moving on, I asked, "What was the moment you knew you needed to make that change?" His answer revealed a profound story about reassessing his values after a health scare, something I never would have learned without that follow-up question. That single question led to one of the most insightful conversations of the entire event. Follow-up questions typically fall into several categories, each serving a different purpose in deepening the conversation. First, there are clarifying questions that help you better understand what's been said. What do you mean when you say it was a challenging experience? Or, could you explain what you mean by traditional approach? These questions ensure you're truly understanding the other person's perspective, rather than making assumptions based on your own interpretation of their words. Second, there are deepening questions that explore emotions or significance. How did that make you feel? Or, why was that important to you? Or, what was going through your mind during that moment? These questions move beyond facts and events to the emotional landscape of the person's experience, often the most meaningful and revealing aspect of any story. Third, there are extending questions that build on what's been shared. What did you do next? Or how did that experience change your perspective? Or how has that influenced your decisions since then? These questions help unfold the narrative further, connecting one experience to broader patterns in the person's life. Finally, there are hypothetical questions that invite imagination based on what's been shared. If you could go back and give yourself advice before that experience, what would you say? Or how might things have unfolded differently if you had known then what you know now? These questions often lead to reflective insights that the person may not have previously articulated. The key to effective follow-up questions is genuine curiosity. If you're asking questions merely to appear interested while actually waiting for your turn to speak, people will sense that insincerity. But when your questions stem from a genuine desire to understand someone's experience more fully, the conversation takes on a different quality, one of mutual exploration rather than performative exchange. In my radio interviews, follow-up questions are essential tools for creating compelling conversations. While I always prepare initial questions, it's the spontaneous follow-ups based on careful listening that often lead to the most revealing and interesting responses. I might have a list of 10 questions prepared for a guest, but end up asking only 3 of them, because the follow-up questions lead us down much more interesting paths than I could have anticipated. I remember interviewing a famous musician who had given hundreds of interviews over his career. He began with polished, rehearsed answers to my standard questions. But when I asked a follow-up about a specific lyric in one of his lesser-known songs, something that had always puzzled me, his demeanor completely changed. "No one has ever asked me about that," he said, and proceeded to share the deeply personal story behind those words. The interview transformed from a routine promotional appearance into a genuine moment of connection and revelation, all because of a thoughtful follow-up question. The beauty of follow-up questions is that they don't require extensive knowledge or clever insights on your part. They simply require attention and curiosity. By building on what the other person has already shared, you create a conversation that flows naturally while progressively deepening. You don't need to be an expert on someone's field or interest to ask good follow-up questions. You just need to listen carefully to what they're saying and be curious about the aspects that seem most meaningful or interesting. Follow-up questions also help balance the conversation. Rather than bouncing from topic to topic or trading anecdotes back and forth, that reminds me of when Follow-up questions keep the focus on exploring one area more thoroughly before moving on. This creates a sense of depth and satisfaction that superficial conversation lacks. There's an art to timing follow-up questions as well. Sometimes the best follow-up isn't the first one that comes to mind. If someone shares something particularly significant or emotional, a moment of acknowledging silence before your follow-up question can give both of you space to absorb the weight of what's been shared. It's also important to be sensitive to when someone might not want to elaborate further on a topic. If their answers become shorter or they seem uncomfortable, it might be time to shift to a new area of conversation. The goal is deeper connection, not interrogation. Practice the art of the follow-up question in your daily conversations. When someone gives a brief answer to your initial question, resist the urge to immediately share your own experience or move to a new topic. Instead, ask a question that invites them to elaborate, explain, or explore their response further. You'll be amazed at how quickly conversations transform from superficial exchanges into meaningful dialogues. Try this exercise. In your next 3 conversations, commit to asking at least 2 follow-up questions before changing the subject or sharing your own experience. Notice how this small shift changes the dynamic and depth of your interactions. Pay attention to which types of follow-up questions elicit the most interesting responses. By mastering the art of the follow-up question, you transform yourself from someone who talks with others into someone who truly explores the rich inner worlds of the people you meet. You move from collecting acquaintances to building genuine connections based on understanding and appreciation of each person's unique story. Chapter 10. The Conversation as a Book. There we go. 9 amazing ways that you can make conversation with anyone, and 9 reasons why you should use the opportunity to talk to a stranger that you don't know. We've explored the power of the first word, learned to skip small talk, discovered how to find me too moments, practiced crafting unique compliments, embraced the value of asking for opinions, committed to being fully present, recognized the importance of remembering details, appreciated the power of strategic silence, and mastered the art of follow-up questions. But before we conclude, I want to share one final perspective that brings all these techniques together in a beautiful metaphor. I'm going to end with this analogy. A conversation is like reading a book. You can turn to any page you want. You can flip to your favorite chapter. You can read as long as you want, and you can read what you want. And every person, trust me, is a really good book. This analogy has profound implications when we truly consider it. Books contain worlds within their pages, entire universes of experience, knowledge, emotion, and perspective. They can transport us to places we've never been, introduce us to people we'd never otherwise meet, and help us understand experiences we might never personally have. They expand our horizons, challenge our assumptions, and enrich our understanding of what it means to be human. And so it is with people. Think about it. Each person you meet carries within them a lifetime of experiences, insights, dreams, fears, and stories. Some are adventure tales, others romances. Some are mysteries waiting to be solved, others inspirational journeys of overcoming obstacles. There are comedies and tragedies, epic sagas and intimate reflections. When you engage someone in meaningful conversation, you're essentially opening their book and beginning to read. I remember meeting an elderly man on a park bench, someone I might have walked past without a second thought on any other day. But something prompted me to sit down and say hello. 3 hours later, I had been transported to World War II France, where he had served as a young soldier. I had visited the small village in Italy where he met his wife of 60 years. I had experienced the joy of his children's births and the heartbreak of his brother's early death. I had learned about his career as a carpenter and the philosophy of craftsmanship that had guided his life's work. In those 3 hours, I had read chapters of a remarkable book that I never would have known existed had I not taken the time to open the cover and begin reading. And what a loss that would have been. For me, certainly, but perhaps for him as well. For books are meant to be read, and human stories are meant to be shared. And it saddens me so much that entire human lives are being boiled down to 140 characters and catchy headlines. Because that's not what we are. We are not abridged versions. We are not executive summaries or bullet points or Instagram highlights. We are entire human stories, complex and contradictory, layered and nuanced, filled with plot twists and character development and themes that run throughout our lives. We deserve more from each other than a cursory glance at the cover or a quick skim of the table of contents. In our digital age, we've become accustomed to skimming rather than reading deeply. We scroll through social media posts, scan headlines, and make snap judgments based on profile pictures or job titles. We reduce complex human beings to simple categories, liberal or conservative, successful or struggling, similar to me or different from me. We decide within seconds whether someone's book is worth our time, often based on the most superficial criteria. This approach not only diminishes others, it impoverishes us. Think of all the remarkable stories we miss, all the wisdom we never access, all the perspectives we never consider when we judge books solely by their covers. But real conversation invites us to go beyond these superficial assessments. It allows us to dive into the rich narrative of another person's life, to discover the plot twists we never would have anticipated, the character development that has shaped who they are today, the themes that run through their experiences. It gives us access to libraries of human experience that no single person could ever accumulate on their own. I think of a taxi driver I met in Dubai who seemed, on the surface, to be a simple working man with limited education. Had I judged his book by its cover, I might have exchanged pleasantries about the weather and left it at that. But by asking a personal question, "Where are you from? Where does your family live?" I opened a chapter about his life in Pakistan that led to discussions of politics, music, family, and dreams for the future. I discovered that this man was not only a devoted father and husband, but also a philosopher with profound insights about life, happiness, and the meaning of success. How many such books do we pass by every day without opening? How many rich human stories remain unread because we're too busy, too distracted, or too quick to judge whether they're worth our time? So what are you going to do in this big world we call the library? Are you going to walk around, look at the hardbound copies and read the titles, or are you going to actually reach for a book, open a page and start reading a story? You decide. The choice is yours. You can move through life engaging only with those whose covers seem familiar or appealing. You can skim the table of contents of people's lives without ever diving into the chapters. You can stick to the bestseller list, the people who are already popular, already validated by others' interest, missing the hidden gems that aren't prominently displayed but might contain exactly the story you need to hear. Or you can become a dedicated reader of human stories, someone who approaches each person with curiosity, respect, and genuine interest in what lies beyond the cover. Someone who understands that the most unassuming exterior might conceal the most extraordinary tale. someone who knows that every person, regardless of their background, education, status, or appearance, has a unique story that no one else in human history has ever lived or ever will. The techniques we've explored in this audiobook, saying the first word, skipping small talk, finding me toos, paying unique compliments, asking for opinions, being present, remembering details, embracing silence, and asking follow-up questions, are all ways of becoming a better reader of human stories. They're tools for moving beyond the title page and into the rich narrative that each person has to offer. These techniques help us open books that might otherwise remain closed. They help us navigate to the most interesting chapters rather than getting stuck in the foreword. They help us read deeply rather than skimming. They help us appreciate the unique voice and perspective of each author, each person we encounter. And here's the beautiful thing about conversation. It's not just about reading someone else's story. It's about co-creating a new chapter together. Each meaningful exchange adds to both your stories, creating connections that might influence the plot of your lives in ways neither of you could have anticipated. Unlike physical books, which remain static once printed, human stories are constantly evolving. The conversation you have with someone today becomes part of their narrative. The insights they share with you become part of yours. In this way, meaningful conversation doesn't just allow us to read each other's stories, it allows us to write in each other's books, to become characters in each other's narratives. I think of the countless people who have shaped my story through conversation, the mentor whose wisdom guided me at a crucial decision point, the stranger whose unexpected kindness restored my faith in humanity during a difficult time, the child whose innocent question made me see my work in an entirely new light. Each of these conversations added a paragraph, a page, or even a chapter to my own book. And I think of the times when something I've said has visibly shifted someone else's perspective or provided comfort in a moment of need. These are the moments when we realize that conversation isn't just an exchange of words. It's an exchange of influence, an interweaving of narratives that enriches both participants. So I encourage you to become an avid reader of human stories. Approach each conversation as an opportunity to discover a new book in the vast library of humanity. Be curious about the chapters you haven't yet seen. Be patient with storylines that develop slowly. Be appreciative of the unique voice and perspective of each author you encounter. Be curious. Be respectful. Be engaged. The rewards of this approach are immeasurable. Richer relationships, broader perspectives, deeper understanding, and a life filled with meaningful connections. You'll find yourself with access to a library of human experience far more vast and varied than any single person could accumulate on their own. And remember that you too are a book waiting to be read. Your experiences, your insights, your unique perspective on the world. These are valuable chapters that others can learn from. By engaging in genuine conversation, you not only read others' stories, but also share your own, contributing to the grand narrative of human experience. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the art of conversation. Now go out there and start reading some amazing human stories. The library is open, the books are waiting, and each one contains a world you've never imagined. All you need to do is say that first word, open the cover, and begin to read.